Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's National Society of High School Scholars World Betterment Series. My name is Tim Lynn, and I'll be your moderator this evening. Tonight's focus centers on how to be an advocate both in and in support of the LGBTQ community. Our panel of 4 distinguished guests will each spend about 5 to 7 minutes sharing their activities, experiences, and thoughts on how to be an advocate in the community, workplace, and in leadership roles. Now, before we begin, I have a few housekeeping items to share. Our session will last approximately 1 hour with the option to extend a bit based on your interest and input. We have over 400 registered participants this evening, so if you have questions, you can use the Q&A feature in the Zoom dashboard. Our session will also be recorded so that you can refer back to it as a resource in the future. And now let me introduce our 4 panelists. First, it's Robert Marchman. Robert is a senior policy advisor on diversity and inclusion at the Security Exchange Commission. His desire to be the best he can be is evidenced in such accomplishments, as being the first African-American executive vice president of the New York Stock Exchange. Robert is a proud parent of an out son and active member in PFLAG. Wendy Smith is the founder of Level Up Social Marketing, which focuses on elevating small businesses in the digital arena. Her successes include being an award-winning director of sales and marketing for several national hotel brands, many of which we all know. In addition to being an active out member of her church, Wendy is an avid online shopper and loves to watch Law and Order SUV. Dave Case has been teaching at Hood River Valley High School for 27 years and was an NSHSS Teacher of the Year finalist. He's a proud parent of an out son and is active with the Gender and Sexuality Alliance. Dave's passion is seeing his students grow into happy, contributing members of the community. And finally, Dr. Anita Hagebrook. Dr. Anita, her current focus is on inpatient hospital care, often referred to as a hospitalist. Her desire to become a doctor began at the age 7, and her passion is to help others wherever that may be. She too is active in her local church and learning to become the next golf superstar. And without further ado, let me turn this over to Robert. Robert.
Sure. Thank you, Tim. And good evening to everybody. It's really a pleasure to be here today and an honor to be on such a distinguished panel. So thank you for the invitation. So just to start off, my pronouns are he, him, his. And I am a board member of NSHSS. Tim had mentioned that I am also a board member of PFLAG National. And I've been a board member of PFLAG National for 12 years now. And for those of you who don't know about PFLAG, PFLAG is an organization that was started in 1973 as a result of a proud mother of a gay son who was tired of her son being harassed and beaten, and formed an organization to support her son and others in the LGBTQ IA plus community. That woman, Jane Manford, started a movement that has grown. Actually, in 2023, we'll be celebrating 50 years. But PFLAG is an organization comprised of loving families and friends of the LGBTQ plus community, working with allies to ensure that our loved ones are afforded the dignity and respect that everyone is entitled to. As Tim had mentioned, I am a very proud PFLAG dad. And one of the reasons that I decided to join the PFLAG board, I wanted to be an advocate for my son and others in the community. And it's been my honor and privilege to do so through PFLAG and other outlets over the past 12 years. In addition, I am an attorney, and I've worked in the financial securities industry as a securities regulator for over 30 years. And while at places like the New York Stock Exchange, Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, and now in the Securities Exchange Commission, where I started my career. I mention that because one of the things that I want to make sure it's understood for all participants today is the importance of you all, and the fact that there are people who are in various places who are advocates, who are there, who are making the case, making sure that there's an understanding of the importance of not only tolerating, but accepting and embracing the LGBTQIA+ community. And tonight we're going to be talking about the importance of advocates. I'll give you two examples of why it's important to be an ally, and we can talk about ally advocate. Just two examples in many I could talk about. In one of the organizations that I worked at, and even though I'm a securities regulator, I've been very much involved in diversity, equity, and inclusion work, which has led me to my current job. But in one of the organizations, they were starting a diversity initiative, and when starting an initiative, we were forming what they call as employee affinity groups of employees with same characteristics, to talk about the focus on the concerns that the groups may have, and how those concerns impact the operations of a company. And so we were having conversations, and initially for this organization, they were going to select three different groups, an African-American group, a parents group, and a women's group. And I was concerned that the LGBTQ+ group was not represented. And my concern was that there was an expectation that people would voice their desire to have a group, when I knew, frankly, the concerns of many to be concerned about being out, but wanting to have support. So I went, and fortunately I had a good relationship with the CEO, and talked to him and stated that if this organization was going to send a message, one of the three groups that we had to roll out had to be an LGBTQ group. And so we had a really good conversation, and he agreed. And so I will say, much to the chagrin of some, but because the CEO was such a champion, we rolled out the initiative, and one of the three groups was a pride group. And that group was very successful in terms of advocating positions for the community. And later the CEO came to me and just thanked me for having the conversation, because he said actually it was probably one of the best employee resource groups that we had. So that's just one example. Another, just, and then I'll end here, is just even within PFLAG. One of the reasons I joined PFLAG is because I wanted to make sure that the group was more inclusive in its outreach, particularly to communities of color. Having a concern about some of the issues that I've seen, frankly, with children, and some who were friends of my son, and how their parents were not as welcoming as my wife and I. And that pained me. And so I wanted to make sure that all families had the same opportunities to resources, not just some. And so being in PFLAG, I think you will see an increased effort to work on outreach, and that is reflected in, among other things, the representation of our board now. So again, being in a position of influence, using your voice, for those who are in the not at the table can make a big difference. So I'll stop there and look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Robert. I appreciate that. A quick thought on your the comments about PFLAG. So is it, correct me if I'm wrong, that so the advocacy work you did there was to broaden the opportunity for other families to join PFLAG who might not otherwise have done so? Is that?
Well, it's I guess I'll say in the diversity, inclusion, equity work I do for people, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So if families were not even aware of the existence of PFLAG, then they could not benefit from the resources that PFLAG has to offer. And what is needed in these situations, and I think we're going to talk about this probably tonight in terms of communication, you need to be mindful that if you want to engage with people, you have to not only be focused on where you are, you have to go where they are.
Exactly.
And so I think one of the things that, and I am a proud PFLAG board member. I am very proud of the organization and the work that they've done, the advocacy that we've done, the work that we continue to do. But the group took on that constructive feedback in a very embracing way. And I think you can see that now reflected in our board representation, the programs we do, our website. Because look, at the end of the day, we need our community collective, the LGBTQ plus community needs as many allies at the table in order, because we are involved in a major effort to push back on those who are not as understanding as those who are participating today and involved in the discussions we're having.
Great. Thank you, Robert. And Wendy, what are your thoughts?
I am excited to be here this evening and on this panel because I am a proud out member of this community. And I have been since I was 14. So I've always lived my authentic self. And I feel like everybody else should as well, whether you're in this community or not. Who you are is who you are. And I push that in to anyone and everyone who'll listen. I think that you have to live your life for you. And it can be difficult sometimes, but I think if you take that difficulty or that uncomfortableness away, it helps you thrive in your day-to-day life. When I was in hospitality and I worked for Marriott and Hilton, I was on the board to start up an organization called One Marriott, which was for our community. And it was a really big deal because Marriott or no other national hotel brand had anything like it. So it was really impactful and powerful because we were the voice of so many who did not get a chance to speak. So I think I'm an ally, I'm an advocate, I'm a cheerleader. I have a rainbow flag somewhere back here. Like, it is just because at the end of the day, we're all people. It doesn't matter if you're in this community or not, or if you're a loving parent of someone. We all have to be who we are. And so I spread that message as much as I can, as my bio said, or no, I think as you said, Tim, you know, I'm a part of my church community. I am on our digital media ministry. So my face represents our church, which isn't affirming, but it is accepting. And so that was huge because it changed a lot of people's forethought about who we were. And sometimes they didn't think we were in church or even should be. And proudly, the church that I attend, they welcome me with open arms and everyone else. And it's also a place where I think young people come and feel comfortable knowing that they too can go to church and God loves them, and so on and so forth. In what I do day to day in working with business owners, I try and tell them when it comes down to marketing and advertising, what they really want to do is to be inclusive and add diversity. It helps. And whether it's gender related or racial related, like you have to include everyone so that your organization seems human to the consumers. And so that, I think, is my passion more than anything, is creating this world and a digital platform that allows people to humanize these brands, to make connections with people, and then understand that that's where the loyalty begins. And so I think every day I live my authentic self. I encourage everyone else to do the same. And I'm constantly having these conversations, because I think right now we are in a world that is ever changing for sure, but we've come so far. When I came out, I thought it was going to be dramatic and, I was going to just like stand my ground. And I had a loving family and they were like, okay, whatever. Are you on drugs? And I was like, no. And they were like, okay. So it just took all the drama away. But when I moved to the South, I realized that there was a difference. And some people didn't have those supportive families. And so I try my best to do whatever I can to help a mom understand, because there is a process in doing that as a parent. You have to let go of what plans you had for your child and understand that there was something different in store. And that's a process. And I think the more that we talk about that with parents and people in general who may not understand, I think the more comfortable people will be in saying who they are. And I think that will make a better world all the way around.
And I'll add to that. And I appreciate chatting with you yesterday and learning more about the work that you do at your church, and that church members come up to you and confide in you and put trust in you. I think also as myself as an out individual for many, many years, it's all, everybody's story is different, and everything is different. And so we all have to be mindful, be aware of that it's not always the same. It may not always turn out to be the way you wanted it to be, but it's something you have to live through and you have to embrace, I think is what's the term that you used. And once you embrace, it's wonderful.
Absolutely, I agree.
All right. Thank you, Wendy. Anything else?
That's it. I'll wait till later.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine. All right. We're going to go over to Mr. Dave. Dave, how about you?
Hi. I'm excited to be here. This has been a fun experience. I didn't know what to expect. It was cool to meet all the people yesterday when we practiced for this and everything. So this has been an awesome experience. So thanks for having me, NSHSS. I'm Dave Case. I teach at Hood River Valley High in Hood River, Oregon. Hood River is a small agricultural community about 60 miles east of Portland. There are about 22,000 people who live in our valley. There are about 1,400 students in my high school. I've taught there for 28 years. And my wife has also. The reason I think I'm on this panel is because my wife and I are the advisors to the Gender and Sexuality Alliance at our high school, the GSA. It used to be a Gay Straight Alliance. We updated the name. We've advised that club since 2006. And I think the reason I'm here is because our school is imperfect, right? We don't have a perfect environment for any of our students, certainly the LGBTQ community. However, we do a better job than most schools. And I think I can explain that a little bit, right? It's a high school club. We meet at lunch twice a month, right? Sometimes we just get some pizzas and watch a movie. So there's a part of our club that is for those. We normally we had our best meeting ever recently, like after COVID. We didn't know what was going to happen and everything, or during COVID, but we had 70 kids outside, like under a tree, who were there excited to be in the GSA, which was really cool. And sometimes we get together and buy some pizzas and watch a movie, right? And it's a way that kids can be around like-minded individuals, right? Mm-hmm. But sometimes we do like advocate for change. We have homecoming next week, and this is our first homecoming we've had where we don't have a homecoming king and queen, right? We've got homecoming royals. We've taken the gender out of the homecoming tradition, right? I don't know if the kids even noticed that much, but the GSA were the ones who pushed this and said, hey, you're leaving some of us out, right? And we have this message of inclusivity, and let's provide a welcoming environment for everybody. We've got this awesome school with all of these things that kids can take part in, but often our LGBTQ kids are left out of that, whether it's athletics or whatever, right? They for some reason they don't feel like they can participate, and our club's pushing for that. We have we advocated to get a gender neutral bathroom on our campus, right? And now this year we're getting a second gender neutral bathroom on our campus so that kids have a place where, and that new one is in a spot where visitors to our campus who are coming for an athletic contest or something can use that bathroom. So we do that kind of thing. I think our most, my wife, who is the brains in the operation in our GSA, she teaches at the high school also. I can't remember if I said that. She often says our club isn't really for the kids in the club. It is for the kids who aren't in the club and don't feel comfortable joining a club, but they're out there and they're at risk and they don't feel, for them, it's a victory to make it to school today and feel like they can walk the halls of our high school campus. You all know how hard high school is, right? And so like Wendy was talking about her supportive family. I'm not sure every kid has that supportive family, right? And so the fact that our club exists is really important. And one of the things we push for, Robert said he was going to talk about like the spectrum of allyship and advocacy and everything. And one of the things we really push for is providing everybody on our campus a way to have low risk allyship, right? So every month we're out there with a table in the cafeteria with rainbow ribbons and rainbow stickers. So anybody who wants to come by and put a rainbow ribbon on their backpack or on their shirt or put a sticker on their water bottle or their laptop can do that. We make t-shirts. We've made so many t-shirts and get them out to staff and those sorts of things that say GSA on them. And we say, hey, first Friday of the month, everybody wear your GSA shirt. And if you go around our campus, maybe some people wouldn't even notice, but an LGBTQ kid who's not out and who's wondering if they're going to be accepted if they do come out can look around and see, hey, that teacher wears a GSA shirt. He's not going to hate me. He doesn't hate me for who I really am. That I see these kids in here with who I'm not sure about, but I see 3 of them have rainbow ribbons on their backpacks, those sorts of things. And so what we're doing is we're creating an environment where culturally at our school, the norm is we're respectful of LGBTQ folks. We're open to LGBTQ folks. And I've seen movement in that. I've been doing this for long enough that I've seen movement, right? 20 years ago, it was very common in my classes for a kid to criticize something by saying, that's so gay, Like
Right.
that doesn't happen. And I don't have to call kids on that anymore. It's the kids who call kids on that now. It's the straight kids who call kids on that. It's the football players who call kids on that. Right. And so that's the thing that we're trying to get at here. The Oregon does this really cool thing, which is called the Oregon Healthy Teen Survey. And they survey all 11th graders about a bunch of health factors, drug use, those sorts of things. I've administered it in my class. It's very private, like it's anonymous. So we get some decent data from that, right? And the last time they did that in 2019, COVID, 17% of Oregon teens identified as something other than cisgendered straight kids, right? 17%. And we keep on trying to push. My students push this, the staff members push this. If you coach a team, there are gay kids on your team, or there are queer kids on your team, LGBTQ kids on your team. If you have a class, there are queer kids in that class, right? They're everywhere, and we have to behave as though we have to love them just like we love everybody else. Our club pushes that. That's what we're trying to get at. Yes, I think that's all I have to say there. Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
It sounds like you've done a terrific job in promoting or instilling some sort of safety, or a safer environment, a more inclusive environment.
I hope so, and I think it's a community-wide effort. I certainly don't want to sound like I'm the one doing this. It's really my students.
Sure.
It's my students, the GSA members on our campus who say, "Hey, Mr. Judah, I love your GSA shirt. Cool sticker, Ms. Durand," those sorts of things, right? And we're trying to create a culture. Yes, so that's what we're trying to make. And I don't want to sound like we're perfect either.
Yeah.
Yes.
So let me ask you this question for those that might be on this session and thinking about doing the same thing at their school, or who are already doing something like this and would like to hear some words of wisdom from you as far as how to succeed, or how to raise the bar, so to speak. What would you offer?
I would offer, some of this is not super politically correct, and I apologize for that ahead of time. Part of our success, frankly, and our club's been around now for 15 years, right? And things were different in 2006 than they are now. And we're a small agricultural community, but we're in Oregon, but part of our success has been my wife and I are married folks. Our kids are in the school. We live in this community, and we'd already lived here for over 10 years. I'm a football coach. I'm a veteran. And so having somebody who's established in the community as a kind of non-threatening person who's doing this is a lot easier than if it's a first-year teacher who nobody knows anything about.
Right.
There was always fear about there's always been fear about trying to recruit kids to join into our gay agenda or something like that, and so we don't invite specific students to come to our class or to our club because they exhibit certain tendencies or anything like that. We're like, everybody's welcome. A lot of our club is straight kids. Most of the time, most of our club is straight kids, right? I think. I try not to know anything about my students' sexuality, quite frankly, but sometimes, yeah. So there's that. And GLSEN is the national organization. It's glsen.org, is the national organization for GSAs. And they have like starter kits, how to start a GSA. And they've got some pretty good advice. They'll try and sell you some stuff sometimes, but it goes to a good cause. But they still, for free, they give you a lot of good information about starting a club on your campus and some of the pitfalls that might occur. Yes. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you, Tim.
It sounds like outreach is important.
Yeah.
As Robert spoke to that with PFLAG as well. And
Yeah.
I think it's, and Wendy's point of letting people know who you are and supporting each other, I think all goes a long way towards furthering being an advocate in the LGBT community.
Yeah.
So now, Dr. Anita, we're ready for you.
Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. And I just want to thank Dave for his energy. Like, his energy and his passion for what he does is visible. That's undeniable. He's the truth.
Right.
But my background is as it said in the beginning, I'm a hospitalist, physician trained internal medicine with some pediatric experience. But way before that started, there was me, and I grew up. My parents are from, as Wendy alluded to earlier about the South. We're from the South, and so my parents are from small town Georgia. And despite my dad going into the United States Air Force and me being born abroad and living, in Greece and Japan and Germany and all these places, our roots were still in the South. And so for me, when I began to, for lack of a better word, discover myself, oh, I'm gay, lesbian. But when I started to try to explore those things, there was a certain sense of shame, for lack of a better word, being an African-American female, Southern roots, being back in the South. It just was taboo. And so, but it wasn't taboo in a sense that people said to me, you shouldn't do this. They didn't even talk about it, but I could hear them talking behind me, or the parents saying something, or like Dave said earlier, you walk by and somebody says, that's gay, or look at him twitching, stuff like that. So I kind of lived in this world where I wasn't my authentic self, unlike Wendy's story, where she could, be who she was and taught others to be so. I was taught or led to believe that if that is going to happen, it stays over there. And you don't bring that into our home. You don't bring that shame to our family and all these things. So I can't say for sure if I suppressed myself or if I just waited until I was in a place where I really wanted to know who I was and live that authentic life that Wendy talked about. So that's kind of my background. And even in my adult, it wasn't until adulthood that I came out, but even in doing so, I was accepted by my parents, but what they deemed a lifestyle was not accepted by them. And so I was never cast out. There was always love, but quite honestly, my parents didn't even know who I really was because they chose to separate who I was to who they wanted me to be or thought I was. And so it was a lot of, growing pains. And in doing so, that kind of spilled over professionally because I felt that same need to hide even in my professional life. I thought, well, if people find out I'm gay, they're not going to come see me. My practice is going to suffer. I'm not going to have any patients. The pediatric patients, their parents are going to think I'm going to turn them gay, things like that. So there was a lot of pressure that I dealt with internally. And I didn't feel like I knew I was doing what I was called to do, but I didn't feel like I was being who I was called to be.
Right.
And then fast forward a few years and I get a supportive partner who subsequently became my wife. And she told me that basically the phrase that the kids use now, do you, they'll adjust. And so I began, do you, and they'll adjust. And so I began to walk that way. And sure enough, people adjusted. And even in the workplace, you would sit in the office with other doctors and they would make comments about gay, lesbian, transgender, and they would say things and, not honor those. And at first I used to sit over in the corner and be like, well, I'm not going to join in, but I'm not going to say anything either. I'm not going to chastise them, but I'm not going to say anything.
Yeah, it's
and
a tough
then
spot
as
to be.
I grew in my being comfortable with myself, I then began to be that voice in that workplace and say, you might be offending somebody that's nearby. And they'd be, no. I said, no, it's me. Or I'd walk into the room and, I'm sitting there and somebody sees my wedding ring. Oh, you're married? What does your husband do? I said, my wife is a marketing executive. no questions, no cowering down. And so I think in being vocal, kind of like Wendy said, you make it seem as normal to them as it is to you. So we've done that in the church setting, in the work setting. And one of my biggest accomplishments to me in terms of being an advocate and an ally is we are a part of a giving circle, which is a group of friends that fund a donor account. And we have chosen one of our top giving is to the LGBTQ plus community. And our focus is on displaced youth because of a lot of our experiences. And not everybody in the group identifies as LGBTQ plus, although quite a few of us do. But that is one of our passions, is to make sure that these kids that have similar experiences that we had when we were younger, except for they get cast out,
Right.
that our monies go to help keep them fed and sheltered and clothed, and to let them see us as professionals and see that there's light at the end of the tunnel, and that this is not the way your life has to be, and you continue to be yourself, and either they'll come around or you'll just blossom into who you are. So it's my passion as an adult for nobody to feel like I did as a young adult.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I really appreciate you sharing that, and I can relate to what I see as a transition moment into becoming a true advocate of the LGBT community myself, as you've shared your experience, having been in the workplace for many years, many different situations where the comments come up and conversations, and having that moment of, do I say something? What do I want to do? And what's at risk? And what we may think is at risk. But we all, at some point in time, will hit that moment. And then from there on, we have become an advocate for the community.
Yes.
So I really appreciate you sharing that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No, that's it.
That is it. All right. Well, I think this is the moment where we have some questions that are in our Q&A queue. And let's see. This is for Mr. Case, and I'm going to read this to you. As president of my high school's GSA, my question for Mr. Case is, how can I help my club get more involved with the community and help make my members feel safe? My pronouns are, and this rolled, excuse me, she, they, it. So Dave, any thoughts?
I have some thoughts that are more easily expressed if I unmute. Thank you for the question, Grex. And your question reminded me that I did not mention that my pronouns are he, him, his, right? And I think that I think having a GSA that exists is really important, right? And sometimes you got a GSA and not a lot's going on and you're wondering, are we making any difference? But the very existence of a GSA on campus is super important. Like, there's been actual research that shows that for LGBTQ kids to feel safe, like, one of the number one things that they need to see is people in their community who are openly gay and living happy lives, right? And very soon after that on the list is a GSA at their school. And they might not have to be a member or anything like that. So number one, don't think that you're not making a difference just because there hasn't been some sort of hallelujah moment, right? And if you can, we struggle in our GSA with whether or not we are supposed to be providing a community for LGBTQ kids, or if we are supposed to be providing advocacy for the cause, right? And so we settle in at when we're at our best, we got a schedule, right? The first Friday of every month, or the last week of every month, we're cutting ribbons and preparing so that on the first Friday of every month, we can be handing out ribbons to people. And we talk about what we're going to do for the Day of Silence, which is a way that a thing that GSAs do where students will choose not to speak for the day to represent the way that LGBTQ folks have been silenced over the years, you know, those sorts of things. And so by doing those things, we're saying we're here, right? We're here. The GSA is here and LGBTQ folks are here. And we need to be a part of this conversation, which is like what Robert was talking about the work that he's done in community. That's what we're all talking about, is saying we're here and we deserve the same human respect that every darn human being deserves, right? So I'm not sure if that really answers the question fully, but that's my best response. Yes.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks.
Wendy, we've got a couple of questions. And the first one is, any tips to come out as a lesbian as an African-American female?
I would just say, be honest. I don't know if coming out and what that situation looks like. I never said I was gay to anyone other than telling my family, but people I encounter just in conversation, if they were like, oh, are you married? Yes, my wife and I have been married 9 years, is my response. So I think in whatever way that's coming out, if it's to your parents, I think whatever form of communication works for you. Like I mentioned yesterday, Anita wrote a letter to her parents because she really wanted to get everything out. I thought that was great. Me, I just am drama and just wanted this whole conversation to be had. But I think the best way to do it is just to be honest with yourself and whoever is around. If there's a conversation brought up and maybe it's something said negatively about the community, then maybe you speak up then, or just when you feel comfortable. I say just do it in as normal form as you can. Because if we make it seem like it's a bad thing, then people are going to continue to feel like we should hide who we are. And that's not the case. We are who we are. We belong here. We deserve everything, you know, that is entitled to us as human beings. And so for that, I say, just be authentically you.
Thank you. There's a great question here, and it is, and I'm going to throw this out to anybody on the panel, and it's from Jessica. It's, how do we move forward as advocates and create a safer environment for the community? And I'm sure each of you have a thought about this. Why don't we start with you, Robert?
Well, Tim, I want to, because, you know, unfortunately, I know we only have a limited amount of time. So I just want to say this, because I'm looking at some of the questioning that we're getting. You know, I just want you all to know that you are not alone, that there are a lot of folks out there who are supportive, and that I would encourage you to reach out to some of the resources that we are going to provide. Of course, I'm going to tout PFLAG. PFLAG is one organization, but there are a number of organizations, some of which are specifically focused on youth, that will provide you with resource and guidance that we're not going to be able to get through tonight. But you know, because I'm concerned because of things that we've heard around the impact of social media and a lot of things and the negativity there. And so I just want to kind of leave you with just an understanding that, you know, understanding that everybody has their unique journey. You don't need to take that journey alone. So that's one thing. Two, in addition to the work I do in the corporate world, I just want to kind of provide a framework. So I know many of you are in high school, but if we look ahead, I'm also on the board of trustees of a small liberal arts college in Western PA, Allegheny College. And I will tell you, surprisingly there, given where you would think it's located, there is a understanding and a recognition of the need to have resources and support for students in the LGBTQ plus community. And so, and that's not only to that entity, it's across many institutions, learning institutions understand, because they understand, frankly, the value add that you all bring in your unique selves. And the last thing I'll just note to kind of complete the picture is in the corporate world, where I spent a lot of times. And I want to talk on something Wendy Smith said about your authentic self. And I saw a question about that. It is difficult for you to perform in a high functioning way if you are not your authentic self. Corporate America realizes that. They also realize that with the changing demographics and looking at millennials and what you and younger generations, that if these entities are going to be successful, they have to be more mindful and more opening and more embracing of understanding the differences, the diversity, and not only diversity, but working to make sure that people are included and in an equitable way. That is, that you have a seat at the table. So I say that all to say that I know for some there are difficult times, but I don't want you to feel that you're by yourself, and that there are people, organizations, entities, and even families and friends that you don't even know about, think about, are there to support you. So I would, you know, I've just seen a shift in both academia and with corporate America. I can definitely tell you in corporate America that they understand the importance of making sure that the corporate environment of organizations, not all, but many, that it is welcoming for the LGBTQI plus community. But I've seen that over the 20 plus years that I've worked there. So as you're kind of thinking about these issues, I want you to think about it in a way that leads you to a place where you can be your authentic self, and understanding that that is a way that's going to allow you to really reach your point of happiness, but also understanding that there are a lot more people than you know who are supportive, not ignoring what you see on TV or social media or what else there. I mean, oftentimes the people with the biggest mouths get the most attention and do not reflect a majority of people who are by and large supportive. So I just wanted to say that's based on some of the questions that I've been seeing tonight.
Robert, thank you for sharing that. And if I could just insert this, I'd love to hear from the other panelists as well. You would be surprised, I think we're all very surprised of how many people, when it is that moment when you are your authentic self, who already know that about you, and not to make fun of this, but it's actually quite a comical, it can be a comical situation where they'll say, well, I already knew that about you, so what's the big deal? Let's do this, let's do that. So and you couldn't have said it better, Wendy couldn't have said it better, in terms of you can't perform unless you are your authentic self. And so if you're putting up these barriers, and Dr. Anita brought it up too, it's just, you'll find the time, you'll find when it's right for you, however you do it. But also, to Robert's point at the end of this presentation, and it may already be in the materials for you, NSHSS, I can't say that tonight, I don't know why. There's a whole list of resources. It's not all inclusive, but it's some suggested resources that would be available for you. Other panelists, any other thoughts? All right, well, we've got a few more questions. And let me see, which one do we want to grab here? So I'm going to go to the question of, I myself have a GF that is non-binary. Is there a way I should mention onto her, not her or he, because I don't want to offend them in any way or form? Is there a way I can do this? P.S. I really mean this for all non-binary people out there. Any thoughts?
Wow. I would say think of everything different than what you've been taught, right? We were taught that girls wear pink and boys wear blue, and the girls should wear dresses and boys wear pants, and we all know that that's not the case. So I would say take all of that noise or what was taught previously out of your head and just respond in love, right? Accept whatever is put out into the universe and say, I receive it, or I may not understand it, but just help me. And people will help you. It's difficult to say that you are fluid because you don't feel like the same person every day. I mean, I wake up and feel different. You know, some days I'm a beast and I'm going to win the person that I'm racing on the treadmill next to me. And then some days I'm just like, I'm just not going to try. And then I still do anyway, but whatever, it changes. And so I think in that instance, you just respond in love. I understand, or I don't. Help me. And then that starts the conversation, because if we start to assume anything, it really goes in a bad direction. And I just don't, I would not want to do that for anyone or make anyone feel uncomfortable, because I certainly understand what that's like.
Great. Thank you, Wendy. Another question here is, what tips does the panel have to suggest about being a respectful conversation as an ally? Or what tips would you offer when having that kind of a conversation? So we've spoken about being an advocate.
I can chime in.
Sure.
I think the biggest thing in those regards is to approach the conversation without an agenda. Open the floor for discussion, but be more of a listener. And in that way, you'll understand more of what you need to understand. So, you know, for example, it's kind of funny that you said that, Tim, but when I came out to my brother, he said, "Man, I knew that. I already knew that." He said, "You used to always have like all your friends, all your girl friends, not girlfriends, but friend girls were beautiful. You picked your friends based on their beauty. I knew you liked girls." He said, but he had a friend in college that told him, "Don't approach her. Wait till she comes to you." He wanted to come to me, but he said, "Don't approach her. Wait till she comes to you, because then you'll know she's ready." Because he was fine with it. And probably had he asked me earlier, I would have been like, "No, what are you talking about, man?" Because I wasn't ready yet, or I didn't know. And so if you're going to have a conversation about being an ally, just open the door and let people know that I'm here, I see you, whatever you want to talk about. And then that way they don't feel pressured, because if they feel pressured, they're not going to open up and really talk to you.
Yeah,
There's a direct question, I can almost assure you there's going to be And unless it's super soft in its approach, there's going to be a withdrawal from that person.
That's a great point.
Can I add to the question,
Yes,
not to the response? So the question I'd have for our LGBTQ panelists is, I think sometimes people, when they want to be an ally, they're worried that they'll use the wrong language, that they'll mess up somehow and say something that's offensive, because the language of being an ally can be a real impediment sometimes. And if someone's not comfortable with the right pronouns, or the right new term, or how many letters we're going to use and all those sorts of things, should they just not talk? Or how can they express their allyship if they're not sure what words to use?
Dave, I'd love to answer that one. I think it's just like you just said. You walk up as an ally and you say, look, I'm not going to get this right. I'm going to mess it up 1,000 times, but I'm going to stay here, and I'm here, and I'm going to, so correct me when I'm wrong, and I'll get it right at some point.
I love that.
Me too.
Just me. I'd love that. Okay. So we are, I think, about to wrap up, but before we go, and I think we've got a slide or two that speaks to the resources that are available to our audience. I'll put the panel on the spot and ask each of you to share with the community that's participating in tonight's session some final thoughts, words of wisdom, whatever you feel is appropriate, and that's something that is heartfelt from you that you'd like to share. And I'll turn that over to you, Robert. Start with you.
Well, actually, it's a message I just sent someone. So that message is stay strong, and know that you are loved, and that there are better days ahead, and there are many people who support you. So that would be my my statement to the group.
Thank you. Now, I called on Robert first. Now, who would like to go next?
I'll go. My parting message is always the same. Live your authentic self. And by that, whatever makes you feel comfortable, if silence works, that's okay too. If wrapping yourself in a rainbow flag and marching down the street makes you feel good, then do that. Because at the end of the day, if you don't live for you and you die tomorrow, then what was it worth, right? And so this world isn't perfect. No one is. But when you take away the power of making you feel small, everything is possible. I'm 5'2". You'd never know that when I walk in a room, because I command the room, because I feel like I belong there and I have something to add to it. And even if I don't, that's my thought process. And so I always tell people, take the power away, whether it's they make you feel uncomfortable because you're gay, or if you're overweight, or whatever that thing is that they're making you feel uncomfortable about, own it. It's yours. It's not bad. It's just they're uncomfortable. So make them a little more uncomfortable. Just be good with you. And they do adjust. I promise they do.
So true. Thank you. Can
I go next?
Yes, sir.
All right. So I guess this is a message for the allies out there. And sometimes you might think that fighting the good fight for the LGBTQ community might not be, you might wonder how much effect you're having. But then Tim, you mentioned when we were at the beginning that I'm a proud I'm the proud father of a gay son, right? My wife and I started the GSA before we knew our son was gay, right? We were just trying to do the right thing for human beings in our building who needed more respect. And then all of a sudden, it became real personal to us. And all that hard work and everything we'd been doing for other people ended up coming back to us, right? And it's human rights. I deserve human rights. You deserve human rights. Everybody deserves human rights. And what comes around goes around. I don't know. Yes. It's an important thing to do to make sure that everybody has the rights that they deserve. And this is part of that struggle. Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And to sum it up, I think authenticity has been a word that's gone around and probably come out of multiple mouths tonight. And I think that would be my parting message, is to be authentically you. There will be some struggles, but if you stay true to yourself, those around you, even if they pull away for a while or, make you feel like you don't belong, if you continue to be the kind, loving, passionate, whatever your strong suits are that you are, and don't change, they'll see that nothing, that being gay or lesbian or bi or anything else is just a title or what you do in your private time. The heart of who you are is still the same person. And I know that from personal experience, because that's what happened with my family and my parents. I didn't change. I continue to be the child that they raised me to be the child in church, to be the child that's, serving, a child that worked, all those things. And they realized, well, nothing really changed. She just has a wife. And one of the things Wendy alluded to was that there is a period, I've always heard this from Nate Berkus, but there's a period that a parent has to be allowed to mourn the loss of what they thought was going to be the life of their dream. And so, no, my dad didn't get to walk me down the aisle, but that was his choice not to at that time. Now, years down the line, sometimes I think he likes my wife more than he likes me. But our family it's fine, but it just took time, and I didn't give up, I didn't waver, I didn't change, I didn't become angry. I just stayed the course of being my authentic self, and everything fell in place.
Great. Yeah. And this may come across a bit odd, but while it's always about us, it's not always about us.
Right.
And that's really, really, really important for everybody to keep in mind, no matter what. I echo everything that's been said tonight. I want to thank the panel for participating. What you'll see on your screen now are a list of resources, many of which have been mentioned throughout this presentation. And you will find these also on the NSHSS website. And I think if that is the last slide we have, I'm going to get a little signal. I think I got the signal. And so we have the last slide with contact information. Any of us are available for any of our participants, or participants who might want to share our information. You can certainly do that, and you'll see that everything is listed here on the screen for you. Once again, thank you to our panelists. Once again, thank you to our participants. We hope this was beneficial. And with that, have a great evening and a great rest of the week. Bye-bye. Oops, I forgot something. If everybody's still on, there's the QR code for Scholars Day, which is going to be here in Atlanta, November 19th through the 20th. If you want to register, you can use your smartphone and scan the QR code and get yourself registered. It'll be a great event. All right, thank you.